Welcome back to a new episode on the Story Slam series, and today we will be hearing Julia Schiavoni's story.
Hello. My name is Julia Schiavoni, and I had the pleasure of joining Dr. Chin on the last time her Borka program would be running over the past decade. So yes, my name is Julia, and I'm from Buffalo, New York. And prior to this experience, the only travel experience I've had outside of the country thus far was to Canada. So when I was given the opportunity to join an ethnographic research team studying in northern Italy, I think it's fair to say that this being a new experience would be an understatement. Growing up, my family would take us on vacations to even distant parts of the United States, but no matter where we went, I was just a passing tourist. We would stay one place for a short while and only have very surface-level interactions with the local community members. So this research trip was novel to me in two main regards. One, I'd never experienced such a drastic difference in geography, in architecture, in art, in food, in language, so that in itself was so new and exciting. But secondly, this was novel to me because it was the first time I was able to experience the phenomena of deep immersion into a community, especially one that was completely foreign to me. Up until this point, I had never experienced such a welcoming embrace by a group of people that were essentially complete strangers. Of course, I recognized that my team's ability to form these relationships was deeply facilitated by Dr. Chin and our other professors' long-standing connections with the greater Borka community. Upon arrival, though, I soon realized that I was operating under many unexamined assumptions that I made previously during our pre-departure seminar last spring. I had assumed that these distant contacts were more of an objective and formal relationship, but this turned out to be wildly incorrect. I was caught off guard to see that these were instead warm and casual relationships, much like any true friendship. I didn't quite understand how these long-distance relationships could be so deeply maintained over decades since their inception. But their existence became very clear to me one day in Borka. After we settled into our apartment day one, Dr. Chin took us out on a walk through the town to see if we would run into any familiar faces. In this small town, it didn't take too long. I have a distinct memory of when we happened upon a man outside of a large wooden house in his yard with a rake in hand tending to his grass. What made this moment special, though, was watching Dr. Chin and this man immediately recognize each other and proceed to greet each other like family. They hugged with a kind-hearted embrace and began catching up like old friends. I listened as they conversed in both broken English and broken Italian. The language barrier quite obviously didn't prevent them from reuniting. Soon after, though, I was introduced to this man, and I quickly learned that his name was Peppino. It clicked that this was actually the Peppino that Dr. Chin had named her dog after back in Rochester, so that in itself solidified my understanding of how deep Dr. Chin's relationship with this community was. And it was here that I understood that I was in for something very different than I expected. The other students and I leaned into this opportunity and were optimistic to make our own friendships in unexpected places. For instance, what started off as a focus group interview with a handful of Borka's college-age youth ended up as a friendship that we've maintained connection with even now. It turns out that college students thousands of miles away, and even in remote mountain villages, are still your average stressed college student. We bonded over many things, but we found most fun in making jokes about the cliches and stereotypes of an American. I think back to the time that they had us take a Name the States quiz, because they were sure we weren't going to do well at that, which we passed with flying colors, I will say. Now, being back in Rochester, though, I'm reminded of these friendships from the group photos we have hanging in my dorm room, and the occasional text we'll send in the Borka Meets Rochester group chat. And although I didn't expect it, despite the astonishing landscapes of the Dolomites, I know it'll be the people that I remember most from this experience. Thank you.
We'd like to remind you that the opinions expressed by our guests on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Center for Education Abroad or the University of Rochester. Our podcast aims to foster dialogue, critical thinking, and exploration of various topics related to education abroad. We encourage listeners to consider multiple viewpoints, engage in respectful discourse, and form their own opinions. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our community.